people say don't mix family and friends. I say mix family and friends. If you're doing things the right way and go about it the right way, they should be your most loyal supporters and your first supporters and be there for you and you be there for them. And I guess that's kind of just how I feel about it. I don't know. I'm doing this for the long run. I'm 22 years old right now and I want to do this for a long time. And it's not worth burning a bridge over a couple $1,000s today when that couple of $1,000s down the road could be worth so much more.
If you're an active real estate investor and you're looking to do larger deals, you're in the right place. We are going to go and take the conceptual type of stuff that you listen to from other real estate podcasts and bring it down to the tactical, the nitty gritty, the actual actionable types of things that other real estate investors that went big did to grow their own real estate empire. You're listening to the Go Big Live podcast. I'm your host, Matt Drouin. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm your host, Matt Drouin, host of the Go Big Live Real Estate Investors podcast. Today, I'm going on a theme of identifying those people that are young real estate investors that are coming right out of the gate. I'm not trying to be ageist or anything like that. The whole theme of this is that it is never too early or too late to start in real estate. Case in point, there's somebody that's in our local RIA. I'm not going to identify them or shout them out because I don't want to embarrass them, but I see them as the Colonel Sanders of real estate, started in their 60s. So we have a really impressive guest on today, Mr. Jason Nichols. He's just got 2 years of experience, but he's bringing a different perspective to the podcast we have today. He's currently focused on multifamily and residential flips in the New Jersey area, and he is just beginning his Go Big journey. Throughout his career so far, he's been able to raise close to $1 million of private investment capital for some of his deals, which include his flips and also a self-storage facility deal. So at just 22 years old, he's going to bring a fresh perspective to our audience today. So I really want to welcome you, and I'm honored to have you on, Jason.
Thanks, Matt. And hello to everyone listening. And I look forward to talking about this and hopefully we can learn something from each other.
Absolutely. So I like to start with each guest. You were born and now you're here. What happened in between?
Well, I was always a top student, top of my class, and I hated school, which was tough because my mom's an assistant principal and my dad's a cop. So W-2, go to college, get a good job, 9 to 5. So I was in college. I had 96 credits, a 3.9 GPA, and COVID happened.
Mm-hmm.
And my school pretty much wouldn't allow me to come back unless certain things happened. And I said, I don't think I'm learning. I don't think this is worth my time. I think I could do this on my own. And I was going for business at the time and I wasn't learning business. It wasn't worthwhile. So my mom said, all right, if you drop out, she didn't say all right. She was a little more mad than that. But she said, if you drop out, you better do something with your life. So I looked up a quick license I can get, New York State Realtor license. I got my New York State Realtor license and I closed my first deal with my cousin and I made decent money. I was like, wow, the hourly on this is pretty good. I like this. So then I went and got my New Jersey license. So then I closed the deal in New Jersey. And then from there, my eyes opened to the whole world of investing in real estate. And from that moment on, I was hooked. It's a little bit of a different path than a lot of people my age are taking. All my friends are getting their 9 to 5s, coming out of school, walking down the aisle. I'm in construction jobs and I'm on flips and I'm flying out to Indiana and traveling to New Jersey. So it's a little different, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah. So why real estate? What was like the seminal moment that kind of clicked? Because that's kind of random. I know you went to business school and you dropped out of college, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So you're like Kanye West, college dropout, right?
Yeah. 96 credits and I dropped out.
So what was that moment, or was it a collection of several moments that led to that interest in real estate?
I've always been business minded. I've always done odd jobs and found weird ways to make money. And the good thing about reels, even though I don't like to scroll them too much, is they started tailoring to my interests. And then guys like Ryan Pena would start coming up and I'd start seeing his content. And I was hooked on it instantly. That, and then with inflation being such a hot topic issue, hearing inflation, hedging against inflation, it all just kind of clicked for me. And I was like, this makes a lot of sense. And this is something I could really do, despite all my family being W-2 9 to 5 workers. And I didn't even know how to use a hammer, yet I thought I could flip a house. And so for some reason, I thought I could do it and I'm doing it.
Awesome. So let me ask you this. Usually we talk about pretty big syndication deals on the show here. Most of our listeners are experienced real estate investors that have never raised capital in their life before.
Mhm.
And every time they buy an investment property, they blow through all their cash and it really slows them down. And in terms of OPM, other people's money, let's talk about the first deal where you had to raise money. Because I mean, I imagine at 20 something years old, you didn't have, $5 million sitting in the bank. So
Right.
tell us about the origin of that.
So I always felt I can't ask for other people's money until I have some of my own money, some skin in the game.
Mhm.
So my first deal I did with my own money because I just felt like that was fair. So I had something to go off. And after that, I was able to say, look, this is what I did with my money. This is what I could do with your money. And it's funny. There's money out there. I mean, I'm not doing multi-million-dollar syndications, but I've always been able to raise a couple $100,000 like that. And there's people that are interested in real estate and they're just scared. And I think you have to break it down for them. And maybe age is on my side in this case. I said, look, I'm 22 years old. I just did it. We're going to do it together now and you could do it. And I think being younger works in my favor. These people have 9 to 5s. They can't go check the job site if they're doing a flip. I can run out there anytime and I'm always able to be available. So I did my first deal with my money. I think that's important. And I said, look, I did this with mine. This is what I could do with yours. And I started off with friends and family. And a lot of my friends don't have a lot of money. So I'd go to 5 friends and I would need 100,000 for a flip. And I would say, all right, you give me 20, you give me 20, you give me 20. And it's painful that way. And it's tough, but they gave me their 20. They would make their 2, 3, 4 grand on it and they'd be happy. And eventually that's going to scale. It may sound baby, but you have to crawl before you run. And I'm starting to get up to a jog at least. I'm not crawling anymore, but it's slowly starting to build.
So how did that conversation start? I mean, you did your own deal. It looks like maybe you put together a credibility book in the words of Gino Barbaro. How did that conversation start up with friends and family? Because I agree, that's the lowest hanging fruit. Those people already have you as, in their KLT factor. They'll know, like, and trust.
Yeah. So I don't really like to post on social media much. I'm not a huge social media guy. And I posted my first flip on social media and people started reaching out to me that I haven't spoken to since middle school. They saw that I flipped the house and they were just so interested and they just started coming to me really. And they started the conversations and the more I would post, the more people would reach out and people are very interested in real estate right now. A lot of people, especially my age, are frustrated with the 9 to 5. I mean, all my friends are coming out of school, $100,000 in debt, starting salary, 60K. Everyone, no matter what your degree is, 60K. Everyone's at 60K.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want that with their lives. And they look at me, I don't want to say they're inspired by me, but they see me as potentially an out for them or a way to expedite that process of getting out of that 9 to 5. And I think COVID changed a lot of people's perspective on things and financial freedom's a hot buzzer word, but that's the truth. And that's what a lot of people my age want. I think that's why I'm connecting so much with younger audiences.
So now, was that you made a post on social media, some people reach out to you. Was that your aha, hey, maybe on my next deal, these people that have interest in having some type of participation in real estate, I can start reaching out to those people that kind of came out of the woodwork from middle school? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I started reaching out to all of them, just hammering them, getting on FaceTime calls, Zoom calls, going out for lunch, and just telling them what I was doing and telling them how I think we could help each other. And I made it very clear, this is not real estate's not a get rich quick scheme at all. And it takes time. But I also explained to them the beauty of compounding and how that money could expedite quickly. And we had time on our side, luckily being young. So that collation of things, putting all that together, people were really excited and very receptive to it. And it's refreshing because going through school, I was always in the smart classes, gifted and talented scholars, and they don't teach you about any of this.
Mm-hmm.
And we were told in school, if you're smart, you get good grades, you make a lot of money. And all my friends are smart, getting good grades and not making a lot of money in debt. And they feel like they were lied to and tricked. And they look to me as a voice of reason and someone who's doing it. And I think being able to connect with me and me to have these conversations with them, their eyes open. It's talking real estate with people. It's like talking sports or girls with my best friends. They're just as interested and they love it and they've been eating it up.
So let's get a little bit granular here. You were connecting with people on FaceTime. Did you have a script? How did that go? How did that start off to begin with? Maybe it was awkward. How did you develop that script and what to say to those potential investment partners over time?
I'm not a big script guy. I'm very just from the heart. I played baseball a lot and I was a catcher. And like when you would talk to the pitcher, some pitchers you got to be hard on, some pitchers you got to be soft on. You have to tell them. So that's how I kind of viewed when I went to meet with these investors. Some investors, all they wanted to hear about was money. Some investors, all they wanted to hear about was risk. So I had to tailor my conversation to mitigating risk or showing how much upside there could be. But what was nice about the conversations is at the end of the day, everyone was there to make money. And when you're with a bunch of like-minded people, the conversation flows pretty easily.
Yeah, I think that one of the most impactful books in my life was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And in that book, and also he's got a follow-up to that book. I think it's called something like the Paradox of Leadership or something like that. But in Extreme Ownership, they touch on that you have to moderate your leadership style based upon the people that are on your team. And just like you said with the pitcher on the baseball team and that sort of thing. So I think that's really smart. Myself, I didn't come from a background in sales. I had to develop that salesmanship over time. I do take the same approach because even with the style of personality of the person I'm talking to and really taking the moment to not just pitch them the opportunity right away, but to understand what their goals are and what their fears are. Because when you're utilizing OPM, people don't really talk about this. OPM wants to find OPT, other people's time, OPE, other people's expertise, and thirdly, OPO, other people's opportunity. So if you have one of those things, then you can marry with OPM and those other components of the whole thing. But the first process, I think, is discovery, because you have to do the discovery first so that you can custom tailor whatever the opportunity is to it and speak to the things that are important to that investment partner and not just being like a one size fits all in terms of like a verbatim script you would stick to. You agree with that?
100%. When some of the money I raised for the storage facility deal, I was talking to my parents and asking them if they'd be interested in putting some of their life savings into a storage facility, which talking to a cop and a teacher about that, that's just not what they did. And it's funny because my mom's questions would be, my mom's more emotional. She'd be like, what happens if it burns down? What happens if no one wants to go? And my dad's question, I said, it's a 10-year plan. He goes straight to year 10. How much will I make in year 10? So you just kind of have to know who you're talking to and know your audience. And I think if you have a boring cold call or same cold call script, it's just boring and monotone. There's a million people every day pitching to people about why you should give them your money. And especially with all these coins and stock market, it's so easy for people just to invest and see all these get rich quick schemes. And that's why I think you have to speak to the heart, speak from the heart, and really tailor your conversation to what their concerns are.
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk taking a step further here. I want to talk more about this first deal you raised capital for. So you did, 20 G's a piece. What was the structure of the offering to your investment partners in that deal?
So the most important thing to me is the money gets paid back first. I'm not going to see any money until you see your money. So we were able to raise some money, and in exchange for the 20, I think I told them the first 4 or 5 back would go to them. So that's a 20% return on 20 grand, which, I know it's a small deal for a lot of the listeners here, but in college, 4 grand, that pays for you and your girlfriend's vacations for the year. 4 grand goes a long way. So I structured the deal in that they would all get paid back before I received anything. And that's the way I structure all my money raising deals. They get a set number before I receive anything. And then if we exceed that number, they'll get redistributed. I'm not going to make more than they are. The money comes first. And that to me is the most important thing. And that's how I've structured it. And people have been really receptive to that. I've seen other deals where it was a 50-50 split. The guy who put up the money, deal didn't go so well. And they split 5 grand each, 2,500. Like, I'm not going to do that. I think your responsibility is to respect the money, and people are receptive to that. So that's kind of how I've structured any deals where I've raised money.
So what was the term that you were offering on this? We were like, hey, your money's gonna be out here for a year and then you're gonna get paid back XYZ?
6 months. And I think it was 4,500. And they were very receptive to that because sitting in the bank, it's not doing anything, their money. And no one wants to put their money in the stock market right now. All my friends have lost money on these crypto pumps. And so just a steady 20% for doing nothing, their eyes lit up. And I mean, when we're 30 years old, that 4 grand's not going to make their eyes light up, but that's why I'm scaling. And hopefully that 20, they eventually will turn into 50 and 100 down the road.
Yeah, I probably said this before on the show, but there was about 4 years ago, I was raising capital for a deal. I had a really high net worth individual that was a potential partner in my deal. And I knew that he was probably between 30 and 40 million liquid.
Mhm.
And so he would not give me any more than $50,000 in terms of participating in the deal. Full circle, back last year, he wrote me a check for $1.5 million for one of my deals. So I think you're going about the right way. And you're in a position too where, we talk about use other people's money always, because it's a lot easier to raise money when you've already had a track record with those people and they talk to their friends as well. So you were able to basically $4,500, basically like a flat return, and then you kept above and beyond that. Is that how that worked?
Yeah. Then if we exceeded another amount, I would redistribute again. It's not fair for me to get fat off their money,
Mhm.
and they're not going to want to do business with me again. So I structured it as fair as I could. And they understand this is what I'm doing. I'm putting in the legwork. So that's why I'm going to make a little more, but in no way am I going to make it unfair. And like, so one deal I did with partners, I didn't take any money on it. Per our contract, I was entitled to money, and I just didn't feel right. It took longer than it should have, but we didn't make as much as we should have. And all that money went back to the investors, and they were extremely receptive to that, and they wanted to invest again.
Mhm.
And I think that's just how you have to do it.
So how did you develop this ethos of this really long-term relationship thinking? Because I remember when I was 22 years old, I was extremely transactional. I was always like, what have you done for me today in terms of evaluating my relationship with somebody? But where do you feel that came from, that spirit?
I mean, a lot of people say don't mix business and family, or money and family and friends. And I say, if you can't mix money and business with family and friends, then who can you mix it with? So my first people that I did deals with were friends. And those relationships to me, long term, are worth more than the dollar amount from a financial standpoint and from a relationship standpoint. So I don't know. People say don't mix family and friends. I say mix family and friends. If you're doing things the right way and go about it the right way, they should be your most loyal supporters and your first supporters, and be there for you and you be there for them. And I guess that's kind of just how I feel about it. I don't know. I'm doing this for the long run. I'm 22 years old right now, and I want to do this for a long time. And but it's not worth burning a bridge over a couple $1,000s today, when that couple of $1,000s down the road could be worth so much more.
Wow. So let's talk about the kind of the high level capital stack of this deal. Like, what was I know you raised $100,000 for this deal. Was that the total capital stack, or were you bringing a hard money lender to take
I
this
use
deal
hard
down?
money. Yeah. So I live in Staten Island, New York. I can't flip houses here. I mean, to get like a dilapidated home, you're looking at like 600. Like,
Mhm.
even with hard money, it's just insane. So I use hard money in New Jersey. Prices come down a little bit. So I'm usually able to do, I think this property we were able to buy in the low threes, and about 100K rehab, and all in, it was about 100,000 with hard money. And I think that's the way you have to do it when unless, you get an inheritance or something and you just have that money sitting there. But I don't have that. And I think hard money is the best way to scale. Instead of putting all your money into one deal, do 3 or 4 deals. Then that's good how I look at it.
So you bought this thing, you rehabbed it. Was this a first like construction project you were sort of overseeing as as a GC or project manager?
Yeah. I actually ended up firing the GEC on this project, which is another story. But that wasn't a fun conversation. Firing a 6-year-old man didn't want to get fired by a 22-year-old kid. But yeah, so I was pretty much overseeing the project. I would be the ones taking the trips out there. I was the boots on the ground.
Now, let's fast forward this a little bit. So you got this thing rehabbed. You probably got a lot of learning out of the
Oh, yeah,
process, maybe some battle scars in the process.
definitely.
I'd been there. My second property was a 4-family property I bought, and it was a major rehab project. And contractors looked at me. I had barely any stubble on my face, right? And I had contractors looking at me like, "Oh my God, look at this sucker." Well, let's fast forward a little bit. So you listed this thing after you rehabbed it and you sold it. Is that what happened?
Correct. Yeah. With my friends, I'm just doing fix and flips. I'm not in a position, we don't have enough money to do long-term buy and holds. I mean, 100K, maybe in the Midwest, you can buy something with it, but it's just not enough money to go around. So I'm trying to make money on the coasts and then invest it in the Midwest and buy and hold long-term. The money goes a lot further that way.
Yeah. So you had hinted about a self-storage facility that you did some capital raising on. Tell me about how that opportunity came to you, because that's completely random. You were doing fix and flips, and now you have this buy and hold self-storage facility, and you got the opportunity to, co-GP on it or whatever. Tell me about that.
So one of my mentors, Mike Martorella, he was on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he opened my eyes to storage. I mean, storage sounds so boring at first, sounds so boring. And he ran through numbers with me, and I was infatuated by it. And I loved everything about it. And I wanted to be involved so badly. And like I said, so to raise other people's money, I feel like I have to put some money in. So I put $50,000 into the first storage facility he had, which isn't a crazy amount of money, but I'll say, look, I did it with my life savings or with a big chunk of my life savings. This is why I think you should do it. And I asked him, like, how can I become more involved? How can I get the equity? And he said, you could find deals or you could find money. And I did some searching for deals and I did some searching for money. And luckily I stumbled across some money and I was able to gain some general partner equity, which was really nice. And that's I think you have to create value, if you can create value, people are usually pretty receptive to you. And I know that I'm limited right now in regard to funds and experience. So value for me is bringing money in deals. And down the road, I'd like to do my own self-storage syndication or my own self-storage facility. But for now, this was a big step for me to get my foot in the door and to learn a little bit about syndication, how to present the deal. And it was really good learning and I got some equity out of it.
So let's talk about that deal, right? So was this a deal where Mike was like the lead sponsor on it or what?
Yeah. So Mike and his partner, Paul, they're doing a syndication. They were looking to raise X amount of dollars and they said in exchange for bringing in X amount of dollars, you'd receive this amount of equity. So I had my sights $7.5 million I wanted to raise, which was a little ambitious. And I got there. And I don't think I would have got there had I not put my 50,000 in to start. That's how I would lead every conversation. So I think that 50 turned into that 500 almost. And that's kind of how I went about that. I'm always looking to add value in any way I can. Because I feel like, especially with your mentors, it's nice when you call and ask them a question and they answer you, but you kind of feel like the relationship's one-sided, like you're just taking and you want to give. And I can't give with experience and I can't give with my own money. So that was a way I can give back and try to help out and say thank you for what you do for me.
Now you had to raise 500,000. Did you just go back to the same well that you went to before when you were raising money for flips?
Yes, but times 10. I mean, I was told no. Oh, it's a Ponzi scheme. It's a get rich quick scheme. Why doesn't everyone do it if it's so good? The Midwest was just a turtle up alone. People on the East Coast. I was told no so many times. And that's just part of it. The people on the flips, at least, it's like get rich quick. I give it to you, I get my money back in 6 months. Storage facility, which is a 7 to 10 year plan, that's a tougher pitch. And you really have to find people who are I was trying to target people who had young kids who are going to be in college one day. I thought it was a great way for a college fund down the road, put your 50 in it now, grow it to 120, 150, and that's your college fund for your kid. And my parents were also city workers. So I was targeting people who were retiring and coming out with their 401ks and their pensions and not really sure what to do with it because the city's always not to control their money, but I was taking out of their check and they didn't really have to think about it. So those were the two groups I targeted where my friends weren't interested in this. I knew this was something, the minimum buy-in is 50,000. So to put 50,000 into something that they won't necessarily see for a couple of years isn't appealing to someone my age where I felt the other audiences were much more interested.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, you kind of went back to the same well and then you faced rejection. Am I characterizing that right?
Definitely. Yeah.
So what was sort of like, how did you develop a new prospecting strategy in terms of pivoting for this? Because you probably had certain expectations, like this is going to be a slam dunk with the people that I've already done business with. What was your prospecting strategy? It sounds like you touched on it a little bit. And how did you implement that prospecting strategy specifically down to the details?
So I started off with friends and then I realized this age group isn't working. So I went to friends' parents. I just kept going off what I knew and the people I knew. And I knew I had to target a different audience and I had to do a little bit of a different pitch. And that was definitely challenging. It was the first time I really faced like serious rejection. I mean, I probably pitched storage to over 100 people and gotten 4 or 5 yeses. But those 4 or 5 yeses were so worth the 95 rejections. And I think going into it with that expectation, I didn't have that expectation at first. After the first 15, I realized maybe this won't be as easy as and I thought it would be. But so I started to expand and then literally anywhere I went, I would tell people about storage. I was at the pizzeria talking to the pizza guy. I told him I do about storage. Getting my hair cut, I tell the barber about storage. Because you never know. people, like I said, are interested in real estate, and people who you wouldn't expect to be receptive are pretty receptive.
So it went from those types of conversations. And how did you, now it looked like you had some infrastructure lined up. Knowing Mike, like he's a pretty fortuitous individual in terms of like probably having all the documents in place, the subscription agreements, the private placement memorandums, all that stuff. How did it go from, hey, Jason, I'm interested. How do I take it from here? What did it look like from that point in time?
Well, just to backtrack also a little bit, not only was I selling the facility, but I was selling Mike, because Mike was the sponsor of the facility, and Mike's very impressive, as you know, and Mike made my job a lot easier because I just had to sell Mike. And once I got them interested, then I set up a call for a dinner with me, Mike, and potential investors. We were able to discuss from there. So my goal was to get them in and then let Mike take it from there.
Mhm.
And lucky for me, he's very good at closing, and he's very impressive. He's very polished. So that made my job a lot easier.
So when did that deal close?
2 weeks ago, two weeks ago, the 500,000 range. I asked Baker 2 weeks ago if you saw him posted at the facility in Memphis he just acquired.
Yeah.
It was the Memphis facility.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
So for those investors that has a few deals under their belt and that sort of thing, and they are looking to go bigger and reach financial freedom and these really big goals, what are some words of advice you would give to them to kind of take that leap?
Do it. You have to do it. Like I go to these real estate meetups and events, and there's men that are much older than me that I've seen them there now multiple times, and they're not doing it. And I understand everyone's at a different point in their lives, and it's harder when you have a family and you have kids, and to take that jump. And that's why I'm trying to be a risky person and take those chances now. But you have to do your first one. Like, so you do your first flip, then you do your first single family, your first multi-family. You have to do it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And I think people are looking for the perfect deal. Then I don't think there are any perfect deals in real estate. Every deal is going to have some blemishes, and you have to go into it knowing that and accepting it, and knowing that there's going to be some hardship. It's going to be a rocky road. People made that clear to me, and I didn't realize how rocky it was. I was speaking to my lawyer the other day, my real estate lawyer, and I was like, does anything ever close easily? And you're not in real estate. Never. And like, just going into it with that expectation that it's going to be tough. There's going to be days where you're like, why am I doing this? But the reward is just so worth it. And you just have to take that leap of faith and just do it.
Well, excellent. That's a wrap on the recorded part of the show. We have several people in our live Q&A room that want to ask you questions, Jason. So if you're listening to this right now on podcast or Spotify, and you want to get on the exclusive live Q&A with investors like Jason's mentor, Mike Margarella, Gino Barbaro, Stephen Libman, Brian Burke, Reed Goosens, all the rock stars that are out there that are doing big deals in commercial real estate industry, you got to join our Facebook group, the Go Big Live Real Estate Investors Group, and get direct access to our esteemed guests like Jason. So Jason, again, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
And thank you for having me.